What is going on, everyone? What's going on? Welcome back to another episode of the Dead Man's Mike podcast, the Halloween Horror Nights podcast. And as the countdown shows all over social media, we are 10 days out from the start of HHN34. Craig, how are you feeling tonight, man?
Man, I'm feeling good. We're on the cusp now, where this is like built up anticipation from realistically February up until now. This is gonna be the culmination of everything that's come before in terms of announcements, um, build up and excitement. And you already know how I'm feeling, man. I'm excited. How about you, man?
Dude, I'm feeling good. In fact, this episode is pretty cool because we're going to hop into some history and get some different perspectives tonight. I know our audience, you guys are used to hearing Craig and I's perspective and takes on different things as major fans of the event, but we have another person who's devoted a whole lot of time into Halloween Horror Nights, and that special guest is our boy Mark of Horrors Untold Official. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys. It's great being here.
Yeah, we appreciate you for doing this, man. If you don't mind, can you kind of give our audience a little bit of a little background as to what how it came about, and just a little bit of background about your platform.
Oh, geez, that's a story. And of course, as you're asking me these
Hey,
questions, all the
we
cats are
love the
coming up.
stories, man. We love them.
Okay.
Bring it on.
Well, I used to work for a website called Orlando Informer. I was the editor in chief there for several years. That's how I first came across this weird thing called Halloween Horror Nights. I had never heard of it before, and I started to cover it professionally, write articles, do a lot of research for the different IPs, movies, TV shows, whatever that were coming to the event. And eventually, the guy who hired me, his name is Dan Hatfield, he sold the company. He moved back north to Minnesota. And a couple of years later, I followed suit. And when I quit, he reconnected with me. And he's like, I miss the theme parks. I miss all that stuff. I miss HHN. How can we rediscover it? And how can we cover it in this new, interesting, inventive way? And so we came up with a whole bunch of different ideas, and eventually we settled on this book that's part fiction, part nonfiction, part puzzles and games, something that quite literally has never been done before. And here we are. Got the strange behemoth that you got just yesterday, right?
Yep. Just got the copy yesterday. We have been checking it out as much as we could before we could record.
Yeah.
I love the way
Sorry.
No, you're good, man. Once you ship it out, it's up to the mailman guys to get it to us.
Right.
But one thing I really like about the book is basically how you explained it. It's a culmination of a bunch of different things going on here. For you, what exactly, like, how did you come up with your topics, what you wanted to hit on with the event? Because I know it is heavy into the lore and the background of HHN Orlando, but decide what things you want to hit on and what things you may not talk about, or vice versa.
So in my previous job, I had a fair bit of contact with Universal, the marketing and PR and legal departments. And I realized they had a lot of red tape. There's a lot of bureaucratic hoops they had to jump through. There's a lot of permissions they had to get from other license holders and stuff. So their ability to do products that were very in-depth and exhaustive and comprehensive, basically very limited, unfortunately. So I saw this kind of hole where we can go in and we could fill it. We could be the unofficial, and we're definitely, I should probably make this clear up front. We have nothing to do with Universal. They don't know about us. This is all, like, I guess you could say fan made, but hopefully
this is fan made, guys. It's fan made.
Professionally fan made, hopefully. We wanted to be the resource for all the old timers who maybe kind of forgot either the exact relationship between Jack and Oddfellow, or how Chance, when was she first introduced and how did she interact with Jack? And we also want to be the comprehensive go-to resource for newbies, people who maybe are just dipping their toes into the event and want to get caught up in 34 years of lore and mythology and history.
Right.
So we wanted to do something that was timeless and that was evergreen. We know there's lots of podcasts like you guys. We know there's lots of websites and other services where it gives you up-to-date information and speculation and what are the ticket prices and what's the lineup this year. We wanted to kind of take a step back and be timeless. We wanted to present 3 decades worth of history as a complete story with beginning, middle, and end. And here you go. And this is we hope it's the most coherent, the best written, the best presented way to access all the information.
And I don't know about you, Craig, but I feel like this is a very good resource for, you have your people that prefer to read and would like to learn the history, by not going to a podcast or not following a certain platform, and they would like to do this in more of a fun way. Like you said, Mark, you guys have puzzles and games and different stories and different things to tie everything in. So it's kind of a different way to pull that piece of the audience together.
That's a much more rational, coherent way of saying it than I ever could have myself. So yes, I think we kind of accidentally bumped into that. We more approached it like, why do an original story that is coupled with actual real HHN history? And that's because we know that you're not going to get scared reading a book. Well, reading fiction books, sure, but not reading a book that's a history of a theme park event. We wanted you to be on the edge of your seat. We wanted you to feel kind of unsettled. We really wanted it to feel like you could take a piece of HHN creepiness with you back to your house. And so all 3 of us are out-of-staters when it comes to Florida and Orlando. So when we want to scratch that itch, or even if you are in Florida and it's not, it's the middle of March, it's months yet until HHN comes back. How can you scratch that itch? Well, we wanted an original story that you could sink your teeth into. And we had a veteran filmmaker help us as our story editor. And then we had a professional puzzle designer from Scotland who came in and did the interactive aspect of it. And one of the coolest compliments we've gotten so far is it feels like old vintage HHN with the websites and secrets and things you can discover. And we weren't necessarily exactly going for that, but that's definitely, like I said, a huge compliment, and we'll definitely take it.
No, absolutely, man. That I just think it's really cool. And honestly, like you said, this is the first time that it's ever been done, because I had to think back. I'm like, I don't remember seeing any books surrounding the event come out, especially from fans of the event. So that's just really cool, man. And we're glad that you sent us a copy of it so we could check it out. Now, one
Sure.
thing I wanted to hit on that you do hit on in this book is I kind of put it here as America's backward effect on the holiday of Christmas. Um, where are your thoughts on that, man? What are you thinking?
So just to kind of explain to everyone, and this is actually a wealth of history that I wasn't aware of, and I had to do my own research. My writing partner, Zandra, she concentrated on the HHN chapters, and I concentrated on the original ones. And I wasn't quite aware of just how long-lived Christmas is and how messed up it is. It is a bizarre holiday. In certain parts of Europe, it starts in October and it goes all the way through to February. And it hits all these little mini holidays or dates on the map, and different things happen, and vampires come out, and werewolves, and transformations, and dark elves walk from the afterlife through. And it's just like all this just utter crazy. Barnyard animals can speak English and talk to each other, and if you overhear them, they'll kill you. It's just totally bizarre, very fascinating. And so researching that and seeing that history, what you kind of discover is that eventually a lot of those traditions get transported over to England, and then obviously from England to us. And the British and we Americans, we kind of distilled it down and we simplified it, and we kind of separated all these different dates and areas of the calendar into these very distinct, separate things. So Halloween is the dark, scary one. Christmas becomes the family-friendly one. New Year's is more, drinking. It's just the
Right.
adult revelry. So I actually personally, you asked my opinion, I think this version of Christmas is the best one we have. And this is coming from a father of 3 young kids. Like I love the traditions, the colors. I love the family friendly nature of it. I think it's fantastic. And I love also having Halloween so close to it. That's dark and brooding and scary. But I wanted to have my original character be provocative, and I wanted her to kind of say, no, Americans ruin Christmas, and have that be part of the story too.
Right. No, that makes total sense. And I really like the history about how we get those holidays, because like you said, it starts as one thing in a different area, and then by the time it gets to us, it is completely different. Whether if that's more of a positive change or a negative change, but it kind of makes me think of a house Hollywood a couple years ago, Holidays in Hell. I don't know
Hmm.
if you saw that walkthrough or not, but that house blew me away because it hit on every single major holiday, but they also put some emphasis on a couple of smaller holidays that do have kind of a dark connotation behind them a little bit. I think St. Patrick's Day they did some homage to, and the 4th of July. Honestly, that scene
Hmm.
was really interesting how they were able to portray the more darker side of that. Like that, to me, that all that goes into holidays and the history behind that and the differences between all these different countries. So
Yeah, and it's interesting. I lived for a very short time in Japan, almost 20 years ago now, just to show my
okay.
age here. And the way that they would look at Halloween specifically, like I live not too far away from Osaka in Western Japan, and it's like Halloween. Oh, that's when all the Americans get on the subway system and ride it in circles and get drunk and eventually get kicked off by the police. And that's kind of the extent of the festivities for them. And
Huh.
it's not only until recently that the British have really more fully adopted buying pumpkins and carving them and kind of trick or treating and all that fun stuff. So it is kind of fun to see that history, but also today, especially here in America, it seems like such a new kind of weird thing where you can like do Krampus, which is a very real, long-lived tradition, and actually the real Krampus history is something that we base the entire original story off of. The whole thing has the trappings of Krampus, kind of like how Star Wars uses Joseph Campbell or old mythology, the Greco-Roman mythology, as the basis, the template for that story. But it's today we can kind of take Krampus and say, oh look, isn't it kind of new and cool and provocative to take horror and put it in Christmas? And in reality, obviously, it's yeah, a whole different story.
Right. No, I totally understand. In fact, there's a YouTube channel that I watch, and they are not Universal or any theme park content of any sort, but they went to Europe and spent a couple of weeks doing the different Christmas markets.
That's cool.
And that is something that I would love to experience, but
Oh
they
yeah.
did the Krampus night event in Austria, I want to say. I think that's where it was.
Okay, that sounds right.
And dude, it looked like if you transport that event over here to the States and put it in one of the two Universal parks, that it's HHN. It's a scare zone, a
Hmm.
massive scare zone. It looked
Yeah,
great. It looked
yeah.
awesome.
And I guess there's some like I'm not very well versed in this. I probably shouldn't speak about it because I'm just kind of regurgitating things that I heard that I read. I have a whole stack of Christmas books that I read for 2 years. But I guess in certain sections of like the Alps and stuff, there's the kind of a controversy because the more modern, younger Krampus troops are very kind of they want to accept technology and they want to incorporate like performances and lasers and pyro and stuff. And it reminds me of like going to Halloween Nightmare Fuel. It's like, oh, this is an HHN stage show. I got it. And the more traditional guys were like, no, 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 you can't do that. It has to be more traditional. You can't use all the new like Hollywood-esque makeup effects. It has to be like kind of the cheesier, older looking masks. And just that's a whole world that I wish I had the time to dive more fully into.
No, I totally agree, man. That makes so much sense. In fact, you kind of brought up a different point there where you said the diehards, and then you really have those people that are not as diehard, and the people that are kind of just dipping their feet in the water a little bit with the event. I kind of want to unpack your thoughts here, Craig, you as well, about Horror Unleashed. How are you guys feeling about that? Because from what I've gathered, and I've done some research over the last few days after it being open, is that there's a bit of a rocky start, and why, and ways to improve, and maybe there are some parallels there with HHN as well. What are you guys thinking about that?
I've been talking way too much, so I think this is a great time for Craig to
Go ahead, Craig.
unload.
Let us know, man.
So, with Horror Unleashed, I've really been, diving headfirst into it in terms of like how people been, in terms of like the reviews, in terms of what I've seen, what I've heard about it, and honestly, I've really it's been like a mix because you have the content creators and the vloggers that are there, always covering Universal, always invited to the media events. They have, from what I've seen from them, fairly good reviews. But then you have the people that that aren't a part of that, and they've given their flat out review on it, and it's been kind of mixed because of you know not all the houses being open, not all of the drinks are great and the food is great, but like the experience and with the workers is mixed. Like there's people haven't really been getting there hasn't been any respectful reviews in terms of the workers and the scare actors and stuff like that, which is kind of interesting. And so because I was reading this post on this HHN not the HHN group, but I've been reading some reviews uh, on Twitter lately about it, and some people were saying that this one comment really still sticks with me, and it was saying that I feel like if you're like a content creator or an influencer that Universal invites personally, then you're almost like um, you're almost like forced to rave about it and give this such a great review and not be 100% honest about it, and to keep getting invited to these events. And that's perfectly valid, because it's the same way uh with people that get invited to Disney stuff in terms of media. Like, they're not going to give you the honest review, they're only going to show the good things to want to persuade you to get you out there and spend your money, which is true. So um so I think in terms of Horror Unleashed, it's almost like, of course I gotta experience it for myself, but for what I've seen, it's fairly positive. But I will say that all of the houses not being open at one time is and in terms of like the reviews from people that have had the negative reviews on it, they weren't able, like, I remember one review saying they weren't even able to hit all of the houses, or not all the houses, but they weren't able to hit like majority of them because they were closed. And it's almost like they were forcing people to buy food, merch, and drinks without, like, experiencing most of the houses, which was weird. But uh, it's just, I get it. It was the first couple days, the first few weeks of it, but I feel like if they give it time and that more people would come, then everything will run smoothly. They'll get the kinks worked out in terms of the houses and uh the whole experience and all that jazz. But that's how I really feel about Horror Unleashed as of right now. Just mixed reviews and everything of that nature. But it's almost like, up until I see it for myself, then hey, that's all I can go off of.
Right. No, that makes total sense. For me, I kind of feel the same way that you do, Craig, in terms of, for one, it's only been open for a few days. And
Right,
so
right.
Epic Universe opened in May, and you and I went mid-June, and we still felt that this park was definitely old. Like,
Yeah.
there were still things to be figured out and things like that. So it's going to take a while. I definitely like my only concern with Horror Unleashed, obviously from the outside looking in, of somebody who has not had the opportunity to go yet, would be, will these properties stay the same? Will those four houses that are at Horror Unleashed be the stationary houses for a very long time, or will there be some sort of a rotation? With there only being four houses in that year-round attraction, I do feel that at some point a rotation is going to have to happen in order to keep a genuine interest, when people could really just wait on HHN every year and get at least 5 to 6 different houses.
Yeah, Universal has officially said they will at some point rotate them out. Doesn't mean all of them, doesn't mean one of them. They also said there's this kind of vague promise of like limited time or holiday related attractions or experiences, and of course that can mean a whole bunch of different things. We just don't know. We need to wait and see.
Right.
For my money, I haven't been there yet. I might be able to go at the end of this year, which I'm looking forward to. But I think part of it is definitely a question of operations. Like, can you post the house hours somewhere so that even on the website, so people can check and kind of manage their time better? Um, is there maybe a better way of handling reservations for the Premier House, the restaurant in the back that's all Blumhouse themed? So there's that whole can of worms. There's also this other issue of people who go there, and perhaps these are people who have been to HHN on both coasts here in this country, and so they're used to the haunted house experiences and the special effects, the props, the actors, everything. And they look at this and they say, "Oh, it's just more of the same. This is just HHN, but it's in a different state and kind of a slightly different, narrative context." And when it comes to those sets of reactions, I always was under the impression that this was for people who don't go to the theme parks. That this is kind of like the Texas Kids Resort that's going to open next year that Universal is doing. It's a way of reaching out outside of really expensive Florida market in California. And like it costs so much goddamn money now to go go to the theme parks, and even
It
just for a
does.
couple of days. Yeah, like you have to do an RIP tour at HHN. Like I usually am only able to go for maybe 2 nights because of just school and kids and everything else. And in order to do everything, you have to do the RIP tour, and that's obviously a lot of money. And so, how can we make that experience more appealing to people who maybe don't want to spend that much money or go on a plane or whatever? And I think that's why they chose Las Vegas, because it's this tourism capital basically outside of, California and Florida. So I think it's definitely a can of operation worms, and I also think perhaps it's a can of expectation worms, that maybe people had the wrong expectation in mind, which is not their fault. Maybe Universal being very grandiose in their advertising and the way that they've been describing this, maybe it kind of gave the wrong impression to diehard theme park fans like us. Like I'm not quite certain where exactly all the faults lie.
Right. No, I completely understand that, and I agree with you. I actually saw a couple of videos leading up to the opening of Horror Unleashed where that was kind of the vibe that they were getting to, that this isn't necessarily, it's not that it's not for us, but we know that we will travel to the theme parks to be immersed in the environments there. But Horror Unleashed, I think, was really supposed to be for the people in Vegas who really may not have a whole lot of knowledge on Universal at all, and just the whole, haunted house history that they may have and things like that. I think it was really for those people to just kind of stumble upon it. And as you go in there, you're kind of introduced to that stuff, and hopefully that you leave wanting to know more.
Yeah, I think that's a very accurate way of describing it for sure.
Yeah, that's kind of what I think. And then I mean, kind of rolling with that, we got to talk about the future of HHN with, Orlando, man. I think that I will say that I think the HHN is in a great spot. I think it's in probably the most popular of a spot that it's ever been. I think social media has really taken Horror Nights and really propelled it into a whole nother level of popularity. I don't know if you guys would agree or disagree, but I think that it's very popular. But I think we're going to end up not necessarily hitting a wall, but getting close to a point of where they're going to have to start being even more creative than what they're already doing.
Even more creative. That's very interesting because I feel like HHN has become very formulaic over the decades, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I don't mean it's
No.
as an insult, but it's a prepackaged product, and you kind of fit into it. And I think there is creativity, but I think it's more on the margins and not necessarily in the core of the experience. So I feel like the haunted houses are always going to be the haunted houses. Maybe you can do slightly more experimental things, like you can try to do Terrifier and maybe push the gore and the wet aspect of it, and
Right.
maybe that'll work, and maybe it won't. But yeah, I do think all the food tie-ins and the food booths becoming more numerous and more detailed and themed. I think that's a really big one. I could see that really popping up more across. There's some places in City Walk and some of the hotels that already kind of tap into that a little bit, but I personally think like when they did, they kind of themed the lobbies. Was it last year? Was that the first one, or was it the year before? My brain's fried. I can't remember the exact start date.
I think that was the year before.
Okay, whenever that was relatively recently, I'm like, oh, cool. They're slowly, and I went to Sapphire Falls, and it was kind of sort of lightly themed, but it wasn't. I think maybe they can even tie even more of that in, and so guests who arrive there and they check in, and maybe they're not necessarily aware of this horror event happening in the parks, they could look at that and say, oh, cool, what is this? Maybe I should go check it out. Or even if they don't want to spend all that money on the tickets and RIP tours and everything else, they can
Right.
enjoy all the different kind of timed exclusive theming and photo ops and cocktails, and it's a way of celebrating Halloween in a small way that you don't have to go all out for.
Right. No, I totally agree. I think the immersion outside of the park is really pushing the boundary a little more. In fact, I don't know if you saw that in Hollywood, the Terror Trim is Blumhouse again for another year.
Mhm.
And they had the Megan Horde in City Walk, not even close to the park, but they're in City Walk, kind of indirectly promoting HHN, but also entertaining fans outside of the park. So you're hitting those people that may not know
Mhm.
about Horror Nights. Like they know who Megan is, but they may not know about the entire like Blumhouse universe or the history between Blumhouse with HHN, and just different things like that. So I do think that that's cool that they're kind of pushing the boundary outside of the park gates. I think that is going to help. And I think that's where Horror Unleashed will also help with just it being open. Like if you start thinking about planning an HHN trip and early January, but you're not positive if you want to make it all the way down there for 10 haunted houses, 5 scare zones, the whole thing. Why don't we go here and check this out and get a feel for what this actually is going to be like in the fall?
Yeah, I think that's right. And I have to say, something that I wasn't expecting from Horror Unleashed was the way that the backstory, the very premise of that whole attraction or experience ties into HHN, which is they created this term, the shadow world. That's where all the nightmares and all the scary things reside. And depending
Yeah.
upon all the spiritual activity in certain areas, they can those evil demons or residents or whatever, those crazy peoples, they can kind of bleed over. And so that explains where all the craziness happens in Orlando and in Hollywood. And then it's super concentrated here in this little, tucked away warehouse in Las Vegas. And that's why there are all these different like vampires or slashers or whoever kind of roaming around everywhere. And they even tied it into the movie division, Universal Pictures, where they have old set pieces like from Phantom of the Opera, which used to be at Universal Studios Hollywood until recently. And so trying to take the entire spectrum of Universal horror from the theme parks to the old movies and everything in between, and trying to kind of encapsulate that into one giant overarching story. To me, that's probably the most interesting and maybe even the most exciting part of this. Maybe like next year we're going to have an anniversary year in HHN Orlando. Maybe they can then do a story that ties back into Las Vegas, and maybe that can help set up Chicago. Maybe they can tie in the movies more directly. There's a lot of really interesting things I think that could happen.
Yeah, a lot of interesting ways that you can go. Craig, what do you think about Chicago? Um, Horror Unleashed opening up there. Do you think there are any properties that we could potentially see up there that make sense to go up there? What do you think?
Man, you know how excited I am about Horrors Unleashed Chicago. Listen, with short 4 hour drive, you already know what it is.
Right,
But
man. We can get there.
I will say, they could do. We already talked about Halloween because Haddonfield, Illinois, Chicago, Illinois. Hey, close,
Right.
connection with that. They could very well do. I was thinking since Ohio is not too far from Illinois, they could do. Slaughter Cinema or maybe um, Scary Ohio. You know, you never know.
That'd be great. I'm in Cleveland, so I'm all for that.
That was a really solid house. I'm not
It
even gonna
was.
lie. They could do they could maybe um do an original, maybe maybe a blood moon type house. Maybe they could do like go the scenic route, do a dead man's pier. The possible because they do have a pier
Dude,
in
you
Chicago.
you really pointing out some interesting things because that really
Yeah.
ties the entire attraction into the city itself.
Exactly. And so, once you get that type of stuff, like once you know, honestly, I think when it comes to Horror Unleashed, there's like different like factors in there. I like it tied into the city. I'm pretty convinced that, there will be different ties in there with like the city in terms of like the city and stuff. So I mean it honestly like, works out for, you know, Chicago and then like Horror Unleashed, as a whole too, because it would make sense that it would make perfect sense that the different houses that are being tied up in there are tied to the city of Chicago in some way.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, I think that would be really cool. And speaking of Craig, you're kind of bringing us into our next topic here is really the evolution of IPs at HHN as a whole. One thing that I kind of would like to hit on here with this kind of a segment is that I feel that within the last, let's say, 5 or 6 years, the IPs have become very experimental. There are some that feel like this is an HHN property. This works. This is perfect. And then you have some that come in where you are a little weary at first, and you may end up liking it. You may not. But I feel like the creative team has really gone for let's take a chance. Let's see how outside of the box we can get and different things like that. What are you guys thinking about the state of IPs at Halloween Horror Nights right now?
Oh, I
Um,
think Craig should go
oh,
first for sure.
okay, all right. I was just making sure. But in terms of IPs, the evolution of IPs at HHN, they have become very relevant. They have become almost a calling card of HHN so far. In terms of bringing the people in. Um, from where Horror Nights was in from where they was in terms of I'd say like let's say like 2007 with Freddy, Jason, and Leatherface, the Carnival of Carnage with Jack, and because before um you had the director, you had the caretaker, you had Jack, and you had the storyteller, and then they had the in 2006 they had the Sweet 16, And then in 2007, you did have again the Carnival of Carnage, and then I say after that, I say once Carnival of Carnage really, that I mean, Sweet 16, that was like the year the icons, all the icons came together, and it was a celebration. And I think once 2007 came into play, um, with Carnival of Carnage, and with Freddy, Jason, and Leatherface, I think that's what you know took HHN to the next level in terms of like IP usage and stuff like that. Because if you think about it, if you realistically think about it, that is when HHN took off in terms of IP infringement because well, the use of IPs, I should say. Because after that we had The Walking Dead, um we have had Netflix shows like Stranger Things, we've had um um just last year we had Insidious, we had Ghostbusters, we had um what else we had? We had A Quiet Place, and then um we had Beetlejuice. We've had all of these different IPs that have, really, really brought in those fans and have really transcended HHN, and that's taken it to the moon and to the next level because you have those fans of those movies and TV shows and streaming and stuff coming in, and they're being exposed to the rest of the they're being exposed to the rest of the event as well. So I say, you know, the evolution of IPs have gone into a crazy realm, and now this year having Terrifier, that's gonna bring in a whole lot of people. You have fans of Fallout, you have a whole lot of fans of Five Nights at Freddy's, and not even mentioning the horrors of the YS6. I was just recently watching a video today of how um, the guy was talking about how many, like, if you're not a pro wrestling fan, like the amount of fans WWE has, that that alone is gonna pack those people into HHN and pack those people into that house, because you have the WWE following, you have the horror fans, you have the fans of the YS6, you have the fans of the event, and those people at the event, they're gonna come into this house like, wow, they're gonna, now they want to know more about the lore of Bray Wyatt and the Wyatt Six and everything. And I was talking to Nick about this last week or the past couple of episodes about how Orlando specifically, there's such a huge WWE following down there because of the Performance Center and being down there, because NXT is being taped down there. A lot of superstars live in Central Florida. They're gonna come out. They already are fans of HHN alone, with Bray Wyatt being one of the hugest, the biggest HHN fans out there. Uh, they already. I've met some of them last year when we were down in Orlando at HHN, and they're already fans of the event, even when there wasn't even a WWE house there. And so now that there is, that's gonna bring literally a whole bunch of people there. And so, you know, that coupled with the evolution of the IPs, that's just is like this year specifically is what's taking it to the next level.
There's a lot there to unpack for sure. Uh, I think what's most interesting about WWE and Fallout specifically is that you have these larger entities, for lack of a better word. You have whether it's a television show, a video game franchise, this kind of whole sporting league or whatever, and horror is just one of many different elements in it. And so obviously Universal's taking just that one specific horror element and pulling it out and trying to make a whole experience based off of it. I think if they can pull it off, if that is successful, I think they'll probably kind of rub their hands together and kind of say, hey, the sky's the limit. What other movies or franchises or IPs can we grab that might not be entirely horror, but we can siphon everything out and make it into a horror specific experience. I also think since The Walking Dead, and then with Stranger Things, American Horror Story, Universal Monsters, they obviously like having these little multi-year runs in a row. I can absolutely see Five Nights at Freddy's being the first of like 3 or 4 different houses. Maybe they take 1 year off, like Stranger Things takes a couple of years off, or when they were redoing the first 4 Halloween movies, they did it every other year or so. I think they like having that kind of structure, like repeat performances. And then they also have been doing a lot of classic stuff. Every year there's a classic movie or show or some kind of throwback, like The Shining or Friday the 13th, or I guess it's now Jason Universe. But there's got to be something like Killer Clowns from Outer Space was something they wanted to do for so many years. They can just never make it happen until they could suddenly. So how many other kind of cult classics or other legacy throwbacks can they get their hands on in the future too? I think all of those are definitely directions they want to go in.
I agree there with both of you guys. Mark, to kind of piggyback off what you were saying about what kind of old school nostalgic IPs can they get their hands on before moving forward. I feel like this is one that we'll talk about here in a second, but I do want to hit on just the trial and error that they've gone through with trying to get Ghostface at the event. Like the day that that happens, the day that they can actually, we're going to see a surgence of popularity with this event that we didn't even think could exist because so many people want that. And we've talked about the original concept houses and how awesome those are because it's really cool just to hop into a story that was really drawn up from the mind of the team. But it's also cool to go to those houses where the blueprint was given to us with the film or the property already, just by it existing. But going through there and kind of seeing that recreated, it does nothing but get everybody so hyped up and excited.
Is it possible to go back to the era of the icon, like Craig was just talking about? Obviously, Walking Dead and everything else came in, and it's been the era of the IP for the last decade and a half or so.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm curious because the IPs, the license holders, don't necessarily all want to play nicely with each other. They don't necessarily want to be on the same page. So can you do something that's all encompassing, like you have Jack and Chance or Jack versus Oddfellow, which is something I want to see for next year. If we do get HHN35, a big anniversary year, I want to see those two characters come back and go at it. Can they do that with Five Nights at Freddy's goes up against A Quiet Place? Like, I don't know if those different studios would want to do that, but then again, maybe you don't have to. Maybe there's a different way that you can have IPs and the originals interact in certain ways. I'm not quite certain. This is why I don't work for Universal, right? I don't make the big bucks, but I do think the event, whether or not Horror Unleashed works in Las Vegas or in Chicago or wherever else they're going to announce it, whether that works or not, whether we see Universal Studios Great Britain open up next decade and whether there's an HHN there or not, also, I do feel like Orlando is going to be here for at least the next 35 years. I do feel like it's going to be here for a long time to come. And so it is going to continue to change in ways that we probably can't predict right now.
Like from in terms of the bringing back the icons, I'm totally on board with that. Like there was a time where um like a decade or so ago that they were supposed to do Jack versus Eddie, and that got shelved, and so you could easily um bring that back. uh Again, you could do Oddfellow versus Jack. Everyone's waiting on that. There was a tease in the Oddfellow house about Jack, and so we're waiting on that. Um, I'm pretty sure, and about what you were saying about the studios not playing nice with each other. I'll give you a perfect example. A few years ago, uh, there was supposed to be a Scream House, but the studio didn't want it to be based off the first movie. It wanted it to be based off the TV show that was out, and Universal did not like that. They already have built the house. They've built everything, and so they couldn't just scrap it. Like there was no way that they've had all of the costumes and everything ready to go. There was no way that they could have just scrapped it all and just start from scratch. And so I think, just to be on the safe side, I think a versus, um like a versus of things like Jack versus Oddfellow, or like the introductory of more icons into the event, sounds great. Um, I know that a lot of people in Hollywood are looking for, um, they're looking for Jack, or any other icons for Hollywood, because Hollywood doesn't really have icons like that. And so, you know, there is something right there. But I guess, um, because of the, excuse me, we are in the era of IPs. Um, I don't think they're really focused on icons right now, because it's almost like it's the era, we're in the reality era of the world, and so it's all about it's all about what's trending, what's going viral, what's the next best, what's a uh new best thing, what's the next best thing, what's the new trend. So, you know, times have changed. So, honestly, if we were to go back to icons, that would be totally up to Universal.
It's funny you're talking about what's trending and what's hot and what's going viral, and I just had this sudden image of the director. His next movie is not like these old traditional slashers. It's something to do with YouTube or something to do with live streaming of some sort, snuff films like that. There's opportunities there to try to bring these things back and to have them interact with the modern era of the event and the world. But yeah, I don't think it's possible for something like the director to be the face of the whole event when you also have something like Five Nights at Freddy's standing there too. It's going to be. I think it's possible we can have the icons come back, but I don't think it's going to be the same way as we remember it from back in the aughts or the early part of the teens.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it won't go back to the way it was traditionally, but that's a start for it to be, integrated into the new era of how the world is right now and how the event is. Um, but you know what they say about nostalgia. Nostalgia is money. It's a money maker.
That's very
So
true. Yeah.
so there is so much opportunity with um nostalgia, um because you see, like the with the mega movie parade, and how they have all these old iconic franchises like Ghostbusters and Back to the Future, and you have the merch with the summer store with Jurassic Park and Back to the Future and Ghostbusters, um and all of that nature. You like, there's a whole rumor about there being a Ghostbusters roller coaster replacing Rip Ride Rocket, among other things. So, why not take advantage of nostalgia while the grease is hot?
Yeah, I could see going from the icon years to the IP years to the nostalgia years. Yeah, I think that's definitely something that's possible.
and and honestly, you don't even have to go full nostalgia. You could just, throw a little splash of nostalgia in there, and hey, because once people see nostalgia, they coming out the woodwork. Trust me.
Whatever it ends up being, like I already want to write the next book, the next horrors untold. Like I want to cover and document the next section of history, and then it's just I'm a big history buff in general, whether it's theme parks or politics or whatever. So just that by itself is very fascinating to me. And then you throw in everything else, like what can we possibly do for new IPs and how can we, yeah, the whole thing. It's just, and I think this is one of the reasons why HHN has also grown in popularity. It scratches all of these different nerd itches that we all have as a people.
It does. I totally agree with that. In fact, when talking about all these different IPs in terms of the nostalgic, the icons, what's trending today in, world culture and things like that, I feel that it's truly never too early. And Mark, like you said, next year is an anniversary year. This will be HHN 35. And yes, I totally agree with you. I think HHN is here to stay. It's going to be around for a very long time. I think that people like all of us who are diehards of the event, we're really helping to keep this thing alive. Obviously, we keep going. I would kind of like to know what would be on you guys early HHN 35 wish list, especially for an anniversary year. And I can almost say that I know that all three of us will probably agree and say that Oddfellow versus Jack will be
Yes.
on our list. We want that one.
That's it.
Yeah. Oddfellow was just pulled off so well a couple years back. And they did kind of tinker with his backstory a little bit, and it changed Jack's backstory too. But it's also part of the fun. It's like a giant soap opera, and there's twists and turns, and people come back from the dead, and they kind of retcon things left and right. And so it would be kind of cool to see them consolidate those changes more. And there's something that I haven't been able to fully track down yet. I know there's holy God, it's been a very long day. The Collective, Legendary Truth, The Collective. That's what it's called. I am sorry. My brain just went blank there for a second. It's very scary. So, taking Legendary Truth and incorporating that into Horror Unleashed in Las Vegas and presumably in Chicago too, and saying that they were somehow able to trap Jack there. I haven't been fully able to. So, let's stop for a second and step back. There are certain scare actors in Las Vegas who are supposed to be storytellers. And, if time is right and crowds aren't so heavy, you're supposed to be able to sit down and chat with them for maybe even a full half hour. And you can get into the whole backstory and the mythology of HHN. And so supposedly someone already had an encounter with one of these storytellers, and he said, yes, we were finally able to trap Jack. And so if that is true, again, I still need to track that down and verify it. I want to know, so all these characters, all these icons are supposed to reside in Fear's Lantern when they're not in the theme park causing havoc. So how were they able to get Fear's Lantern, or how are they able to get Jack out of it? How does Oddfellow fit in with the lantern? I really want to see something like that. Not necessarily the character of Fear coming back, although that would be really cool too. We haven't seen him for a while, but I want to see what these characters are doing when they're off screen, so to speak. And definitely, specifically, I do want to see Jack and Oddfellow duke it out. And maybe it could even, if they really wanted to be kind of on the experimental side, maybe it's kind of like the Dueling Dragons house from last year, where you can, choose thy fates. You can choose which way you go, or like the HHN Icons Trapped house from the last big event back in last big anniversary event in 2021. Maybe the icon that ends up winning at the end of your run through the house changes. So maybe some days Jack is the victor, and maybe they do like a different show in the lagoon, or just some way to indicate he's, the reigning supreme champion of all of horror everywhere. Maybe other days it could be Oddfellow. Maybe some days Fear comes out. However exactly they work it. I want to know the story. I want to see the house or the show or the scare zone, maybe all three. It's been a while since we've had an icon in all three of those different things. And I really would like to see them kind of, like we're talking, experiment on the margins a bit more and kind of give us a slightly tweaked version of HHN.
Yeah, that sounds very, very great. And speaking of you talking about who's the victor at the end of the night, uh, well, at the end of the house each night, that reminds me of the HHN Icon House. I want to see something like that return because that Icons House was amazing. Hands down, one of the best original houses I have ever been into. Um, and the fact that they had a different winner each night put it over the top because that's exactly what it should be. HHN Icons battling out to see who's the best, and everybody has their different opinions on who's the best. So that would be on my wish list. Of course, Scream is always on my wish list because we were robbed in 2015, and I still feel some type of way about that. And even though Scream um, is being, um, even though Scream is the Scream rights are being held by different studios right now, um, you know, and those studios don't want to play nice, obviously. So you know, but that's still on my wish list. Um, another another thing that would be on my wish list would like now since we have Jason Universe, it's only right to bring Freddy back. It is only right to bring Freddy back. Um,
That's what I'm waiting on too.
there hasn't there hasn't been a like me and Nick was talking about this like throughout the last few episodes. There hasn't been like a house really based on a separate slasher for that long up until last year in California when we had Texas Chainsaw, which was great. And you know, now you got Jason Universe this year on both coasts, and so it's like, hey, it's only a matter of time before Freddy makes his return. So there's that. Um, I would I would like I know now for Hollywood, I know that they have Purge Dangerous Waters, but I would love for them to experience Nightmare Fuel in some way, shape, or form because there's just nothing like Nightmare Fuel. Um, that show is great. That show is amazing. But I know, different coasts. The both coasts want to uh differentiate from each other, which is fine. Um, but it's all right. Um, my next wish list would be to have uh, the food options, all the food options to hit because there have been events where the food has hit, but the desserts have missed, and then you know vice versa. Some of the food hit, some didn't. Some of the dessert hit, some different. I mean, some didn't. Like the s'more, like the Stay Plus Marshmallow Man s'more last year was so disappointing, so disappointing. Um, and like creatively, like presentation wise, it looked great, but it wasn't as appetizing, which was disappointing. Um, that I would say will be on my next wish list. Um, but I know that Universal's culinary team are the best in the business, and they will figure it out. Um, I would say like one of my last wishes um, would be to um, have have a banger of originals like they did this year because like LRTista especially and Brave of Flesh, Dogs Let's Play Dead, and Galkin, like these are great originals, and so I don't want them to just be like, hey, we're just gonna do this year, and then next year it's just gonna be terrible. Like I want all of the houses to hit like they are now. Like don't half-ass anything. Just keep the ball rolling. Like keep like this is what people are looking for. Like it's so easy to come up with good, really great all-timer houses just like this. And I know they got them in the wheelhouse cooking up for next year. Even Birdie said next year they cooking it up. So hey, we now now this year looks like an all timer. Now we're expecting you for it to be continuously like that. And that's just my wish list. What you thinking, Nick? What you thinking?
Man, I will say the whole time that you've been talking about this, I've been thinking about which ones do I really, really, really want to see? Because I feel like there are some that I'll always say I want to see, and then some that will just make sense for an anniversary year. One that I want to see in Orlando specifically for an anniversary year would be Killer Clowns from Outer Space. But as an actual house.
Nice.
And to be honest with you, I know that you and I are very pro soundstage. We want the houses in the soundstage, absolutely. With
Amen.
this, I actually would like for this to be in a sprung tent because you have to think about it. In Hollywood, this house is in the lower lot and it took place in a sprung tent because they recreated the tent itself from the movie. I know everybody's very excited about Terrifier, as am I. I'm very excited too. But I just think the Killer Clowns from Outer Space and HHN have been a success every time that they have been done. So that would definitely be on my list. Another one that is on my list, trilogy being out, I really feel like I would like to see The Weeknd one last time. The reason that I say that is because now that that third album is actually out, we actually have trilogy. I enjoyed Nightmare Trilogy from last year, but I do feel that it lacked on storytelling because that album wasn't actually out yet. So I do feel like that could be revisited and maybe be redone. I would also like to see the Monsters of Latin America make a return to Orlando for hopefully a version of the house that can close out the story. All these
Honestly,
houses,
they could do just two and then do three, or they could
yeah,
just do a mashup or two and three.
right. They could do a mashup. I mean, anything. Those would kind of be the ones I want to see. IP wise, I mean, Freddie would be awesome. I'm really big on original installments of those kind of movies. So in terms of like a universe type of idea, that would be cool. But I really think just seeing that original house and just that original setup would be really cool. So I think those would be it for me. And then obviously a bunch of killer originals, just like we're getting right now.
Now the question is, will New Line Cinema play nicely? Because honestly, for all intents and purposes, they own the OG slasher movies. So they take their copywriting of those IPs very seriously. And so, I just hope it won't be another Scream scenario because that is what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid that they will, you know, want full creative. I'm afraid that they won't play nicely, and they want all creative freedom. You know, but only time will tell.
You guys sold me. Everything you both of you just outlined. Like, yeah, that's I would buy a season pass. I would move down to Orlando for 2 months and I would go all the time. That sounds like a great lineup. Especially the food. Like the food is something that really speaks to me because again, I think it's something that Universal probably has a lot more freedom and flexibility with than they would their more formulaic houses or restrictions from the license holders. The only thing I would probably add to it, besides maybe having that long-awaited Jack and Oddfellow mashup, would be I want to see. Do you remember when they had Jack and his giant blender at Cabana Bay, or before that it was Stranger Things, the photo op? Yeah, they're just photo ops, but there's something to me that I think is nice about having like a dedicated, not necessarily an attraction, because I don't think they ever would have the space or even the budget to do like a little mini Horror Unleashed in Cabana Bay's conference room or whatever. But I want to see a presence, a more substantial presence at the hotels. So if we can't get Killer Clowns back as a haunted house or a scare zone in the park, maybe they have some kind of dedicated area where it's part bar, part photo op, and maybe part like meet and greet with like a little mini scare zone almost with the clowns. Maybe they can be in Cabana Bay. Maybe in Aventura, you can throw in another classic that we haven't seen. Maybe that's where the director comes back doing his viral videos. Maybe down in Endless Summer, they can just branch it out that way more. That would be a perfect way of paying homage to all these older houses or characters or IPs that you just couldn't quite fit into the event proper.
Dude, I think that would be awesome because to me, it really seems like you're with what you just said. Now we're taking it to the resorts, we're taking it to the different places that are a part of Universal Orlando Resort, but are not in the parks. Like it's really branching out and kind of using every avenue and every inch of your market to really expand and educate people on the event. So I think that they should just take the wish list that we just created right here. I think HHN35 would be official right there. I think it'd be great.
There you go.
Well, guys, this has been an awesome episode. Mark, we want to thank you again for hopping on and being a special guest on Dead Man's Mic. We seriously appreciate it.
Definitely.
It's, what's great about doing the podcast rounds is getting to meet different personalities and have different types of podcasts. And it's really cool to be able to join you guys. Thank you for having me, by the way. But it's great that, like, you're still so young and fresh and energetic. It's great to to be a part of that and to join you. So thank you very much again.
No, we appreciate it, man. If you don't mind, can you give our audience the best way to find you? Where can they purchase a copy of the book? Most importantly, we want everybody to get their hands on a copy of this book, man. Where can they grab that?
It is available on Amazon, although I would recommend going right to horrorsuntold.com. That's where we mostly sell the book. It's where we have lots of different samples and chapters. We didn't really, there's so much in the book, you really can't talk about anything, but we didn't even scratch the surface in the fact that each chapter has a whole different format and color palette and look and feel. So if you want to kind of just be able to browse quickly through all those different things, you can go right to the site. And I'm a boring middle-aged white guy, so I don't really do much social media, but I do have Horrors Untold Official. That's where all of our official accounts, mostly on Instagram and Facebook, but that's where you usually will find me.
Awesome, man. Well, make sure you guys go straight to the site. We're not going to do the Amazon deal. Go to the site, pick up a copy of the book, and be sure to follow Horrors Untold Official. Guys, we are 10 days away. I'm so excited. I know you guys are so excited. Please continue to follow us at Dead Man's Mic Pod on all platforms. We've got a lot of cool stuff coming. We appreciate you guys, and we will catch you guys for the next episode. We'll talk to you guys soon.
Peace.